hello there, humans, bees, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and hope you're lucky enough to be doing it too. I'm Bushka Blitz, and today I want to talk about ratings. This is the ratings season that was overview. I want to go right into depth on this in a very informal manner, and I'm going to do it much like a podcast. This will in fact be available as a podcast if you want to listen to it while you're trolling around the joint. So I won't be referencing the video that if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it present too much, because basically it's not particularly relevant for anyone that's watching this as a podcast. The rating season that was the initial rating season for Blitz, and it bears remembering that this was a pilot season. Now, I know people like to get salty and lose their minds about things like, oh my God, I can't believe they did this or that. But there are usually reasons why things are done that way. And people don't do things wrong on purpose or for fun and frolic. People generally try and achieve a goal. And the goal for this rating season, despite the fact that for the player base we might have wanted a seamless 100% perfect experience, was probably from Wargaming's perspective to try things out, make sure that they had some kind of framework in place so that they could progress from here, and that they could also, in fact, get enough of a data stack. Now, Wargaming and game developers love a thing called a data stack, and everyone does, because if you get enough data, you can then go on and make informed decisions. One of the worst parts about bringing in a new game mode, or bringing in a new tank, or bringing in a new map or anything like that, is that you simply don't have any data to go by. Whereas when you're balancing tanks, it's not an abstract thing. You have context, you have data versus other tanks. You can know where a tank underperforms. You can know where a tank overperforms. You can do all these kind of things. Yet when you come out and do a pilot like they did this season for ratings, you're going on past experience in other Wargaming clients and titles like World of Warships, where I've played ranked battles in World of Warships before, and that is exactly what this is, ranked battles. And it differs from World of Warships in a number of ways, and I'll probably won't go too deep into that because you could talk about that on its own all day. They also did ranked battles in World of Tanks, and they also used tier 10 in that scenario as well, I believe. And then we got the rating season in Blitz, and they called it ratings, so it is different to World of Tanks, and it's different in that, for instance, in Warships you got a rank. Now, as you went up the ranks, some ranks were irrevocable. So you go past those ranks and you would keep that rank, and other ranks weren't. And that's one of the things I want to touch on today, the irrevocable nature of ranks in Warships and how we didn't really get that in Blitz, and how that may have promoted a bit of a substandard gameplay at times. And I'll get to how that happens. But first of all, let's talk about the pilot season it was and whether it was a success. And I think it was a great success. It was a different game mode, and it was absolutely embraced. I mean, it really was embraced. The game mode was absolutely played by a huge amount of people. We had everyone jumping up and down and jumping in and enjoying themselves, and that was all well and good. Unfortunately, it was only tier 10. Now, Wargaming probably made it tier 10 because then they get more experienced players, but then they included tier 9 because they wanted to give everyone an opportunity. That's the minor point, but more importantly, they wanted to make sure they got enough people in. This is at least how I see it. And tier 9 was a big mistake. I think tier 9 was a very big negative. You actually had people grinding stock tier 9 tanks in ratings battles because it didn't affect their overall win rate, and it was actually a better way to earn credits while you ground and get XP, because there was a bonus once you got into certain leagues. So I think overall that was a negative. If you were going to do it in tier 10, I would love to think that they would not allow tier 9 in again. That was a bit of an error. And I think it's important to start with probably the biggest error and probably the most negative thing out of the whole experience. This is the way they rated people to start. So you played a game, and then I think it was based on win rate and whether you won or lost, you got a rating. How do I know this was kind of broken? Because I played a game on a base account. Okay, it had no stats whatsoever, and I lost the first game, and it put me at 2,500. And then I played a game on my account where I had like a 64% win rate, with 2,000 average damage, and I won the first game and it put me at 3,500. Now, those are huge variables. And it's one of the things that I think was a big mistake, where people got rated basically on the performance of their first game and their win rate. And I would like to think that it would be much wiser to start everyone at ground zero and work upwards in the future and grind through the win rates and actually make the leagues irrevocable at certain points. So what you had was, you had the Bronze League, which is basically, I don't know how you got to Bronze League. If you're in Bronze League, you're probably just mucking around or you're going AFK, I don't know. Silver League, on the NA server, for instance, Silver League was better than 0.72% of Blitz players. So only 0.72% of players are in the Bronze League. And then you had the majority of the player base in Gold League, which was between 34.47% and 92.6%. So you basically had 58% of the player base in that one league, which is a bloody big chunk. And it was a very, very big spread Gold League. It really was. And then that was the 3,000. So between 3,000 and 4,000 was Gold League. And between 4,000 and 5,000 was the Platinum League. And then the Diamond League was between 5,000 and up. Basically, that was your open-ended thing. If everyone had started at the bottom, if everyone had started at the same rating and then moved up, you would have had a much better distribution of wealth. There is a caveat with that, though. Obviously, Wargaming didn't have a data stack. So now they do. So they know all the people that are in Diamond League. And if World of Warships is any indicator, they will now change this up so that if you're in Diamond League, when the rating season finished, you will more than likely start off at the next rating season above the guys who were in Gold League and Platinum League, so that you actually end up with a much better spread. Now, why is that important? Because it was a very negative experience for a lot of people who might have come in with an average win rate, won the first game, and got slotted in at 3,500 against players like me who've played 40,000 games and have the same win rate as, if you're in the 60s and you've got 2,000 average damage, you're doing pretty good. And that means that there was a really negative experience for a lot of players because they were simply put in the wrong class. And they were up against players who were a lot better. So they started their ratings experience by free-falling from 3,500 down to 2,800 or something, which was really bad and really negative. And it was one of the reasons why a lot of people were very negative about it at the start. Was it got very tough to win. And it's one of the reasons why also it was very streaky, the ratings experience overall. It was a very streaky experience at the beginning. You found a lot of people that were very, very good were just pounding people. They were playing in Platoon, and they were also playing on the PC client. Now, I don't want to have an argument with you. You can say that I'm wrong. That's all right. This is my opinion. PC is, if you're good on PC, it's better than being good on the iPad, because the PC has a much better manner of aiming, and it has a much better auto aim for certain situations, and it's just an easier overall way to play. It's not huge advantage. It's not a huge advantage, but one of them has to be better, right? You can't say any fairer than that. Either the touch screen is better or the PC is better. One of them is better, and it just so happens that I think PC is better. And that means that you get guys who are really, really good playing in Platoon on PC, and they're in a queue against everyone else who's on an iPad, and there's no getting around that. It's just how it is. I think it was a good thing that you could not turn Supremacy off. I think that was a really big part of the game, because you get people that would just play one style of tank otherwise, and they would be able to have an advantage over people that just played Encounter, for instance, and that's important. So I would like in the future, and you can see what I'm saying. This is on my Bushka account. When I first started this game, I kicked off at like 3,000, and I had to grind up from there. Whereas on my contributor account, I started and immediately I was at 3,500, which was really, really odd. And then on my NA contributor account, I started and lost and went to like 2,500. So you can see the difference in the ratings across there was massive, because getting up 500 points in ratings takes quite a bit of time, especially if you're at a low rating where, believe it or not, the gameplay wasn't as good as it was at the higher ratings, which, colour me unsurprised. And that created a very negative experience for people. Now, if you were on a podcast, you couldn't see that, but I was on 3100 rating on my Bushka account, which ended up at quite a bit higher than that. So, the pilot had some issues there. Had some issues with the tiers, and it had some issues with the way people were basically rated right from the start. And that was always going to be tough because you're coming in at ground zero. Now, in future, the ratings will be much more uniform. There is now a stack of data there where they can say, well, this kind of player with all these correlations rates around about here. And then they will be able to move people around much more successfully. I just want to say a really overall positive note here. The gameplay in ratings was better than the gameplay in public. People were very negative about it at times, saying to me, oh, it's rubbish, I'm losing 7-0 and all this. But that doesn't mean that the gameplay was bad. It just means that one team got an advantage, then rammed it down the throat of the other team. And that's pretty much how it usually goes in competitive gaming. If you have a good team and they get 2 tanks up, they don't let you back in. And I had games on maps like Temple. I remember a particular game where the average win rate of both sides was about 65% and about 1800 average damage. It was fantastic. And the gameplay was brilliant. And my team won because we went top on Temple on a supremacy map and capped both the caps. Our mouse did really, really well and capped the B cap there. And then we hung on for dear life while they pushed up. And it was just an absolutely brilliant game that was a credit to the quality of Blitz when it's played well. I know a lot of people are going to say that the teams were terrible and the game was just as bad as public, but I don't find that at all. And I don't know that there were many people in the world that played more ratings games than I did. I played days and days and days of this across different accounts on different servers, just checking it out, just seeing how it worked. I wanted to be a little bit of an expert on it and figure out exactly what made it tick and what tanks were doing well and play as many tanks as possible. And you're going to see quite a few tanks. I think I play 8 or 9 different tanks in the course of the video that you're probably watching. And I got a really good handle on... I played all the tier 10 tanks, all of them in ratings battles across 3 different accounts. So rest assured, I gave it a good hard shake. And the gameplay was better. I'd also like to say that there was a bit of a renaissance for a few tanks. There was a few tanks that I did a big ratings video before we kicked off, and I was pretty certain that some tanks were going to be very, very strong. And I noted those tanks, and I was right with some of them. Like the IS-7, for instance, I was pretty certain was going to be very, very strong, which wasn't a hard pick. It's like the sky is blue, grass is green, frogs don't bounce, and the IS-7 is a good tank. Like, excellent. But I did have a winner for most surprising rating tank for me. And all 3 different categories, heavy, medium, and TD. The heavy for me was the mouse. Now, that was a final toss-up between the mouse and the E100. The E100 was absolutely spectacular as well. The mouse was so much better than I expected it to be. It was able to really accentuate that armor profile, and it did better with better players. And the nature of the ratings game, where when you got up to higher tiers and you had good players who didn't make mistakes and didn't just roll out sideways and get wrecked, you often got a margin of victory, like a very, very narrow margin, and then people would camp it. Like they'd get a supremacy lead and then they would hold, which never happens in public games. You know, people just roll out and absolutely get wrecked. And people were far more conservative in these games. And you can note just how often teams are not just getting absolutely smashed and in ratings games and then dying in the first minute. Like, it just did not happen very often. Generally, there was an edge that would happen somewhere where someone made a mistake, or there was someone pushed the right cap or took a chance and managed to cap something, and then it would get ground down from there. And the mouse was very, very good at holding a line, and its hit point pool and its ability to bounce shots was absolutely brilliant. So it was, for me, one of the big surprises for ratings. I thought its lack of mobility would really count against it, and ratings battles were far more fixed positions than I anticipated. The medium tank that surprised me the most, well, it was a very close one. It was a toss-up for me, but in the end, I went with the STB-1. The STB-1 was actually excellent. I did very, very well in the STB-1 in ratings battles. I found it to be a very strong tank, hull down, and more than mobile enough to get out there and cap bases. Its view range at times was an absolute game changer. The E50M gets an honourable mention. It doesn't get enough credit, the E50M. It doesn't have the DPM. It doesn't have the sexy low profile, but it is a very, very tough pen these days. And in a pinch, it can be a pocket heavy and do all kinds of nasty stuff. But for me, the biggest medium surprise was the STB-1, which for some of you, that won't be a surprise because some of you love that tank a lot more than I do. I think it's a great tank, but I thought that that wouldn't be the case. The same olds were good, like the 62As and the 140s. They were all good, and the Leopard 1 was good, but the surprise for me was the STB-1. And the TD, the surprise for me was the grill. The lack of armor didn't hold it back. Its mobility and there was maps where the grill absolutely was a swaying factor. And that, I really want to talk about one of the maps that I thought was terrible, and that's Copperfield. That was just a ridiculous map to have in a tier 10 matchup. You'd end up with games where there'd be 2 or 3 mediums on either side, and one side would have a grill, and that meant that their grill was literally pumping out, and because the players generally weren't idiots, their grill was hauling butt and getting to the flank at the same time as the mediums, and just providing an overwhelming show of firepower. The tank that was the most annoying was the FV215B183 Death Star. This is the biggest promoter of non-dynamic gameplay in the universe. I don't know how or if it's even worth trying to balance that tank out, but in ratings battles, especially, and this is the thing, as you went lower down the ratings tree, you saw more and more Death Stars. And you can see, if you're watching the video now, I've got 2 Death Stars on my team. I'm driving one of them. And if I was ever having a bad ratings run, I would just take this tank out, because the Death Star was the ratings tank that you could pretty much be assured would grind out a 50% win rate day in, day out, minimal, because it was just such a hit or miss tank. But when it hit crazy big, and when it missed crazy big. And the amount of times I saw teams lose because of Death Stars just sitting at the back doing absolutely nothing, and the amount of times I saw teams win because their Death Stars were proactive and got out there and pushed, it was just horrible. But it's also the one tank that attracts the most like low win rate players playing a tier 10 tank is the Death Star. It's incredible how many people who can't play tier 10 at all will jump in a Death Star and roll out 500 games. Anyway, I have a particular vendetta against this tank, but be that as it may, it was very, very successful at times in ratings for me. So I did drive it, and I found it to be quite good. The grill was the one, though, that surprised me. The E4 was my jack of all trades, bloody reliable heavy, bloody reliable TD. And if I had to pick one TD to go in a battle with in ratings, it would be the E4. It could do so many things, and the utility of the tank was tremendously valuable, especially when you might lose a heavy in a 2-on-2 heavy matchup, and you might be trying to hold tanks back, and the E4 at a snap could step into that kind of role. The worst maps for me were Copperfield and Mines, just terrible maps. Should not be in tier 10s. Best maps, I think the most balanced maps were probably Vineyards. I think Vineyards is just the most balanced map in the game. And Rockfield. I thought Rockfield was actually quite surprising in its balance. So the length of the season was too long, but the thing that really bugged me was the way they did the tiers. Now, Diamond League at the moment is basically the top 1% of players. I ended up getting to 5,035, which got me just over the line in Diamond League, and that was on my Bushka account. I didn't bother trying terribly hard on the other accounts because I played so many tanks and was really testing things out and trying stuff, and the only one I really treated super seriously was the Bushka account. That's my main squeeze. Platinum League is better than 92% of players. So you're basically looking at the top 8%. I thought that was just too generic, and I'd like to see that stepped out a lot more. I would also love to see an irrevocable rank. So if you got to rank 5, and then if they made it, say, a 20 rank system, and you got to rank 5, and then you got to rank 1, the ranks were irrevocable. And by that, I mean you could get to them, and then you wouldn't lose them. You would actually just keep grinding up through them. And the reason for that is because at the start of the rating season, when things kicked off, everyone was trying to get to that diamond rating, and you saw a lot of play and a lot of people in the queue, and that was outstanding. Then as the rating season progressed, you saw a lot of the top players actually sit on a rating. They got to 5,000, they got to 5K, and they sat. And why that was really negative, in my opinion, was it then both lowered the number of people in the queue, and it kind of washed out the quality of the play across the board. You lost a big section of the player base. The other part about it that was really tough was the 1,500 point rating differential. So you could be, and I guess this goes straight back to where people got rated. Like if you were rated at 3,500 and you weren't up to that rating, at the start of the season, that was all well and good. There was a lot of people playing, but as the season progressed and you had people dropping out at the top, you needed people to make up those queues. So you had guys on 5,000 rating getting queued up against guys on 3,600. And so you get platoons of 5K rated players against platoons of 3.6K rated players, and that was ugly. It was very ugly and very nasty. I mean, it doesn't get much tougher than that. Experienced PC playing platoons on 6K rating, 70% win rate, getting beamed up against guys that have just started their rating season off and are severely outgunned. And that was another reason why I think tightening it up and having a data stack to move forward and being able to rate all these players at different levels will be a huge benefit as things progress. I just think so anyway. And look, I also want to commend Wargaming for sticking with this and doing ratings in Blitz. They could have done any number of things and really cartooned it up, but they didn't. They tried to make an honest attempt with it. I think next time out, the obvious ratings tier would be tier 7, even tier 6 or tier 8. Tier 8 is the most predominantly premium played tier in the game, and one of the reasons why I was so certain this was not a money grab or anything like that, and that it was a true effort, was because they didn't do it at tier 8. If they had done it at tier 8, they would have sold a lot more tier 8 tanks. That's all there is to it. They would have sold an awful lot more tier 8 tanks, and that's just a legitimate thing. They do it in World of Warships, and people just buy whatever overpowered premium they can at that tier, and then go out and play ratings in it. And because it was tier 10, we got legitimate tech tree only tanks, apart from the M60, obviously. But that's no longer the pen monster it was once upon a time. I'd love to see that at tier 6. I think that'd be lovely. There's a few tanks there that are scary, but I think tier 8 would be good too. I mean, you get legitimate, good, big bunches of heavy tanks at tier 8, but you also get a lot of other different tanks. And I just don't think tier 10 is necessarily the way forward. You might get more premium players, you might get more wallet warriors at tier 8, but honestly, if the ratings matchmaking is fixed, it should be fine. And considering the overwhelmingly positive response from the player base and the amount of people in the queue, I would expect that they will not go tier 10 next time. They will end up going something like tier 8 or tier 7. And I hope so, because I think that'll be more accessible to everyone. It will absolutely be more accessible. And you can see the quality of heavy play was quite interesting to me. People went the right spots and really did. Look at their grill here. I really thought, sorry, you can't see this on the podcast, so I won't do that. The overwhelming winner for me in terms of tank type was heavy tanks, particularly the Russian heavies. They were able to function with a lot of utility in the game. The IS-4 was the tank I did the best in, but the tank I drove to get to my 5k rating was the IS-7. That was the one that got me across the line at the end. Although I will admit to one thing, And you're going to see this. The last game I show on the video will be the game where I got my 5k rating. And I never really get nervous in game. I can stream in front of 350 people and blow a Kolobanov and just not care. I just don't get nervous. And those of you who have watched the streams and that will attest to that. I sing and I'm jiggling and having a great old time. I froze up. And for me, it's one of the reasons why I loved the raiding season was I absolutely froze up in my tier 10 IS-7 tank and got carried. I got carried in the last game because I got to 4,900 and flat and then went back to 3,900. I got to 4,994 and went back to 4,200. I got to 4,996 and went back to 4,400. So I just couldn't really get there. And by the way, this is a direct poke at Kintech from Skux. Mate, you stopped me twice in your little platoon of doom. You stopped me twice from getting to 5k. I can't remember who you were with. It was a different person both times. But both times I was playing and you're on a bloody PCQ and we're platooning with another Skux bloke, I think. And you wrecked me and my tilt at 5k and added another week's worth of ratings grind to my life. So get stuff. No, I love you. You're a good bloke. Good on you, Kintech. So where was I? Yeah, so heavies were just universally, and particularly the Russian heavies, were very, very good at adapting to most situations, dealing with mediums, dealing with TDs, dealing with other heavies. They were the tanks that, for me, really stood out. They're also the tanks that really went very, very well armor profile-wise. People generally needed to use promo to pen them. They were very good side scrapers. They were very mobile. Like the IS-7 and the IS-4 are both very, very mobile tanks. And they were the tanks that I drove the most in a positive manner. What else do I want to talk about? Yeah, one more touch on the tier 9 thing. It was just unfortunate. I think that they wanted to create a really, really big queue. So we ended up with a tier 9 presence in tier 10 ratings battles. And that was quite often unfair. Like you'd go out and you'd have a stock ST1 in your ratings game. Like, get out of town. That was just crazy. Stock ST1 in a ratings game was just insane. It was a true thing though. The fact that they made that happen would be something I'd hope if they went tier 8 or tier 7 would not happen again. I'd hope that it was just a one-off because it was a tier 10 and they wanted to make sure that people that didn't have tier 10s, which is quite a solid section of the player base, could also take part. That's just my thoughts. Hats off to those of the guys who got into Diamond League and kept pushing because, you know, it wasn't an irrevocable thing. It was legit a proper chance at losing because I know I lost it and I lost 5k a couple of times and it was very, very frustrating. And also hats off to the guys from Premo who took out the top 5 spots on the Diamond League leaderboard, all above 7k bar 1. Who was a measly 6,500. So well done for the NA server. On the Asia server, I believe it was Black Haru, my man Black Haru, who I faced an awful lot of times, and who, you know, both that big game I was talking about earlier on Temple was with Haru and his platoon mate were on our team. He ended up leading the actual Asia server ratings. Russian server, or the CIS, was No Skill Just Luck, who was just an insane 8,785 ratings points, which would denote that it was all frigging skill and no luck. Europe was the Honor, who clocked up 7,925 points, and player underscore 1035627883 from Premo, who has long been known as a super duper unicum who put that name on there just to take the mick. Obviously won North America. Those guys really kicked up, and this is one of the good things about this rating season. Wargaming legitimately put their money where their mouth was. They invited all those guys to Minsk for the Blitz Twister Cup as guests. So they'll be at the tournament in Belarus, which is pretty freaking impressive, hey? The rewards. So if you were in the Diamond League, first place got obviously invited. They got 15 huge containers and 75,000 spare parts. And that all the way down to the standard participant for a Diamond League will get a Diamond Medal of the Twister season, plus 4 big containers and 50,000 spare parts, which is pretty cool. The other leagues, Platinum got a Platinum Medal plus 3 big containers and 35,000 spare parts. And this is all just free stuff, quite apart from the fact that you also earned an increased credit coefficient and better experience as you progressed up the leagues, which is one of the reasons why I think doing it tier 7 and 8 would be great. The Gold League got the Gold Medal, 2 big containers, 25,000 spare parts. Even Silver League, 1 big container, 15,000 spare parts, and Bronze League just got 10,000 spare parts. So just for turning up and playing a few games, you picked up something, which is bloody handy. I mean, if you were in Gold League and you logged in, played, got rated 3,500 points, and never played again, you got 2 big containers and 25,000 spare parts. What a tragedy. What an absolute horror show. Yeah, that must have been terribly tough to deal with. So you're going to get a commemorative medal. Some people are really big on that. It doesn't really matter much to me. I'd love to see them do something like they do in World of Warships, where if you get Diamond League over multiple seasons, you get like a specific camo, or you get marks of excellence, and all those things will come in the future. And I think it's important that we have ratings, because the rating season allows them to actually advance these kind of agendas where you can reward excellence in the game, and some people that's really important. For some people, they play the game for the notoriety of just doing really well and getting the right stats and doing all that kind of thing. And there is a little bit of that in me, not a huge amount, obviously, but I would also love, like I got to rank 5 in World of Warships, and I really would have loved to get to rank 1. And I'm not so fussed about World of Tanks Blitz, because I think I just play it so much. The shine is a little bit off the rose in terms of, I think everyone knows who I am. Like, I think I'm well known enough that it's not a big deal. Okay, so there were good rewards there, and that's a good thing. Hey, and it's anytime you get a chance to get something for doing very, very little in the game, hats off, thumbs up. Hopefully they refine it, they turn it into something that's even better, and something that is more exciting next time out, because I think there is just huge scope with this whole ratings idea to go above and beyond. For me, the big things I'd love to see are an increase to the ranks, make it, say, 10 different ranks. Start everyone at different ranks based on their current rating in the current season of the rating season. And if they weren't in this rating season, then just start them at the bottom. It's just one of those things. Everyone else had to work their way up and has played a full season, so why not do that? So more ranks, make the ranks irrevocable. So if you're in the Gold League and it's a good league and you feel like that's an accomplishment for you, and you've only been playing the game a while, allow those players to continually go forward without having that horrible feeling of loss when they end up, getting stuck and losing their ratings and dropping back down. And that's something that I think was a big negative for me. Like the fact that we got people parking on a rating at 5,000 really slowed it down and washed out the quality of the gameplay, and meant that you also ended up with, as I mentioned before, people at much lower tiers getting stuck playing against people at much higher levels. Yeah, I'm going to show you now the game where I got 5k, and you're going to see exactly what I meant by I just was absolutely deer in the headlights. And there's Sleeping Lion. I played a lot. It was a real pleasure. Look at the grills. Look how many grills. This is towards a few weeks into the rating season, and there were grills everywhere. If you're on the podcast, you're just going to have to bear with me on this one. I also enjoyed the fact that because you got some gameplay where people tended to have a better idea of the game, you are able to play the game in the right way. Like, you're able to play, if you're in an IS-7, you could play the heavy role. You could just soak up damage, and that had a tangible effect on the success of the team in a way that it doesn't always have on a public match. You could side scrape in your E100 and hold a line and intimidate, and that had a much better effect on the success of your team than it usually does in a public match. Success or failure. And you had players who would then just ignore you and go somewhere else. And you didn't really get that in public. You didn't get the tunnel vision in a corridor that happens all the time in public games. So overall, I would consider it a hugely successful exploration. I think there were negatives, which we went over, and I think I was pretty frank about those. And I think the positives were that it was an exciting form of gameplay. It was definitely something, as you can see here, that just made me completely lose my mind and panic and just hands shaking on the controls. And the fact that it meant that much and it was that hard to achieve at times is the real testament to the success of the thing. Like, if I'm a jaded old human who's played 40,000+ games of Blitz and I can still get some enjoyment out of this and be excited about it, then yeah, it was a good thing. It was a really good thing. Thank you all so much also for watching the channel, participating in what I do. As you can see here, I am soaking up damage in my IS-7 and basically getting carried by all and sundry. And I think I even do a celebratory message. Damn, that's 5k. Good game. Thank you, Sleeping Lion and Co, for carrying me. That's good game, boys. That's it. Thanks for the carry. I know where to put my appreciation when it happens. Yeah, lots of stuff coming up in competitive gaming too. Esports and tournaments for Blitz. I'm going to be a big part of that, so keep your eyes peeled on that front. I've got lots of streams. I'm regularly streaming every week. There we go, 5,035. Very nice to get there in the end. 806 damage. In my IS-7 to get across the line, and a 30,000 credit loss because I did nothing. I just literally got picked up and put on the shoulders of champions. And that is very much a big part of where I'm at with ratings. It was not always about you. It wasn't always about the amazing individual performances. It was also about everyone grouping together and doing the right thing and being successful, which is cool. Anyway, until next time, look after yourself, stay safe on the battlefield, and bye for now. Oh, and be nice to each other.